Hey, so can we talk to our prospects and our customers just like we did 10 years ago or 10 days ago, even? Hmm, we'll see. I think the answer is heck no. And I think that's because that the context of our conversation has changed. And today I'm going to have a little chat with Mathew Sweezey. He's author of the new book, The Context Marketing Revolution. I think now more than ever, it's critical to focus on that context and the experience and less about content automation, things that don't matter as much. But we're going to see what Mathew says today. Going to be a fun chat. He's also the author of Marketing Automation for Dummies. So we got a lot to talk about today, and I'm just excited that he's going to spend some time with me today. How you doing, Mathew?
Hey, man, doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, hey, thanks so much for being here. So we got to start here because I think if we didn't start here, it'd be doing folks a disservice. What is context? Why is it so important now?
Yeah, so context, first off, it's a word that you know, but let's talk about what we are discussing in this book and what my research uncovers. So when I talk about the word context, right, the hardcore definition is that this is the new foundation of the media environment. And why that's the case is because now there's infinite amount of media. And how do we determine what media gets to each person? Well, we use an artificial intelligence filter, and that filter is optimizing for the word context. Look at Google search. If you ask a question, we can all ask the same question. We will all receive a different answer that's based on our individual context. We could also then look at social media feeds. Social media feeds are no longer chronological feeds. They are now contextual feeds. And then when we start to look forward into the future, what we see is all media now operates on the grounds of context, specifically the individual's personal context. That's what we mean by the environmental factor. In terms of the tactical factor of what is context marketing, that's essentially the new creative lens of marketing where we focus on helping people accomplish their goal at the moment. And by doing that, the media environment lets us break through. By helping them in that moment, we then build that trust and can parlay that to guide them to the next step on their journey. So a little bit longer than maybe you were expecting, but that's kind of what we're looking at when we talk about context.
Yeah, but really important, I think, really important to have that context of context, right? We have to have a lens through which we even frame up this conversation, because otherwise we could be going in 100 different directions, right?
Right.
Cool.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest things. It's like this concept of context marketing. So here's the big point of the book, right? The last word in the title is revolution, right? Why would I use the word revolution in a book published by Harvard Business? It's an overused word. Here's the reason why. We literally prove out the entrance into a new media era. And why that's so critical is because we have to think about environments dictating the games that we play, right? We have this idea of marketing. We have these truisms, these beliefs, right? Sex sells, no such thing as bad press, right message, right person, right time. Those are all games that we created given a specific environment that we played in. Now that we live in operate in a radically different environment, we can't just take those games forward and say, how do I apply this concept of context to what I know? What I'm calling for is dismantling what you know and then rebuilding the ground up, attuned to the new environment. So that's just a side note. That's what we're talking about.
No, I think that's good. That's a good side note. Good side note. But you talk about, in the book, you talk a lot about infinite noise and this new environment. So what the heck is infinite noise, and what does it mean for our businesses, for our marketing, and for our sales teams?
Yeah, this is the exact point we were just talking about, right? So we left a world of limited media and we've entered the world of infinite media. And so what does that really mean? Well, it means one really basic thing, right? It's a radically new environment. And why that's important is because now who does the environment operate for? It operates for the individual. So here's what we need to think about, right? When that original idea that we have of marketing comes around, right? Pick what any time you want to think, even 2007, digital marketing, right? We still, and when I say we, I mean brands, we had control of the media environment, meaning it operated for our needs. But what happened is what we've seen is now individuals, because of the connectivity, because of the speed, because of the number of devices, have now become the largest creators of noise on the planet. Second largest creator of noise on the planet are their individual devices, right? So we have to realize this. So when we talk about breaking through the noise, what we must realize is it's not just more noise. It comes from different players, it operates differently, and it motivates people in different ways that other forms of media can't. Good example, a Fitbit. A Fitbit is a personal media feed for an individual. It can send you a notification, and that notification is a personalized piece of media no one else in the world's ever going to see. It was created on the fly for you in that moment. and it is actually going to get you to take 500 more steps. Just think about that. There is no way you could ever create a traditional marketing campaign to be as effective to get a person to take 500 steps as that one little piece of media can.
Wow. Wow. So the fact that, context includes the device is really interesting, because I'm wearing my Apple Watch, right? I've got my iPhone here. I'm on my desktop. I've got my MacBook over here. They all produce different noise, right? They all produce different things, because frankly, if I get a pop-up right now from Twitter that says take 500 more steps, I'm like, that they don't have any, that there's no relevancy there. That's idiotic. Some marketer's trying to scam me. But if I get that same thing on my Apple Watch or on my Fitbit, I'm probably going to take some action. Is that what you're talking about here, Matthew? Am I totally off base?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what we're talking about. Essentially, the whole point of infinite noise versus limited noise is just the understanding of we have entered a new environment. And that is the resetting of why we need to reset these old ideas and why we need to give up the old games that we used to play, such as seeking people's attention, right? Believing that all we needed to have was the right message, the right person at the right time, right? Now, what we must realize is to operate in the modern world, consumers have radically different environments that they operate in, right? They can connect to people in new and different ways, right? They don't need us by any stretch of the imagination. So for us to engage with them, we have to focus on helping them accomplish the goal at the moment. And that goal is going to depend where they are, who they are, and what they're doing, right? It changes moment by moment. And so that's kind of what the goal and the focus is. But yeah, you're correct. Every device is now a creator of noise, and we must be, cognizant of that.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. So one of the other things that you've talked about in the book is that you see a shift from marketing, which is what you're talking about here, that big shift, the way that we have to throw that away, revolutionize that, different period, to customer experience, which is, that's really interesting to me, because often I don't see marketing and CX being related. Talk to me about that shift. How's that shift happening, and why is that happening?
Yeah. So when I talk about a new definition of marketing, right? So let me kind of back up. So part of my role is I work for Salesforce, right? I'm the director of market strategy. I focus on the future of marketing. So what I've done is over the past 4 or 5 years, our research team has done a lot of research looking into what do high-performing marketing organizations, what separates them from underperformers. The number one key difference between a high-performing marketing organization and everyone else is executive buy-in to a new idea of marketing. Where marketing, and when I say marketing, we're talking about how a business grows, is no longer about messages that we create and project into the marketplace. It's now about the sum of all the experiences that we can create, right? So those high performers have executive buy-in and a new foundational understanding and operation of it's all about experiences across the entirety, right? From awareness all the way through to advocacy. It's about experience. And if we're not focused on that, it doesn't matter how many ads we put out, how many messages that are creative we can create, we are not going to be growing like we need to be, could be, or how other people in our marketplace are.
Wow. That's very interesting.
Yes, you say CX, right? Yep. CX, UX, all of that is rolled into marketing, right? It's all experience, right? You're going to start to see, and we already start to see a lot of organizations specifically buy UX and CX firms and bring them in for marketing. McDonald's just bought a customer experience firm and brought it in to improve the experience of the drive-thrus, right? And go back to the age-old adage that we've all known about consumers and customers, right? It's much cheaper to keep a customer than it is to go attract and get a new one, right? So, the concept of lifetime customer value and marketing being about experiences is not new. I mean, lifetime customer value first was published in a book about marketing in 1993 by Don Peppers and Martha Rogers, right? It's been around for a while. Now we need to really understand that we don't have any other option, right? We don't have any other choice. If you want to engage with them, you've got to create a positive experience. And if you can't do that, you can't break through. They don't care. It's not going to happen. So that's kind of where we have to be. It's the focus on experience.
Fascinating. So you talked about McDonald's here, but you've worked with some big companies like UPS, Home Depot, AT&T, and looked at what they do differently. So what are they doing right? And what do you think that other businesses can learn from their success?
Yeah, like I said, the number one key differentiator between a high performer and everyone else is executive buy-in to a new idea of marketing, right? Once that shift takes place at the executive level, other things start to happen. What we see is someone is put in charge of the entire experience, right? This is where you start to see chief experience officer or chief growth officer, right? So now there's a new executive who's able to then manage that, because once again, we know if it's not managed, it's not improved. And here's what we really need to think about, right? If the goal of marketing is to grow a business, I just want you to think about some basic mathematics, right? Let's just say that your marketing journey, right? By the way, in the new infinite era, everything is a considered purchase. That's another major factor we have to realize. Because there's risk in any decision, now consumers mitigate that risk, and it's super easy to ask a question and get a trusted answer. Right. So everything from toothbrushes to you name it now has journeys. Right. So going back to this concept of experience, you now have this person that owns the experience. And now if we just break that experience down and believe and see its different steps along a continuum, let's look at basic math. Right. Basic math. If you have a funnel or a journey, and that journey has 4 stops, 4 steps along it. Right. If you increase the efficiency of people moving from the first to the second, from the second to the third, and the third to the fourth, each by only 1%. We're only increasing efficiency of each step by 1%. That is a 40% net lift at the back end. Not to mention, what we're doing is we're focused on creating repeated and repeatable experiences, right? So this now becomes systematic and scalable. So now the next person that comes down that journey, right, they receive a positive experience, and that 40% lift isn't a spike as a traditional marketing campaign would be, right? We push it out. It's a continuum. It's constantly running, and that's how we think about marketing in the future. So that's what they're doing. They've shifted this concept to understand it's the sum of all experiences. They put somebody in charge of that. They support that with budget and the correct technology, and then they look through a different creative lens rather than trying to be so creative by copy, advertising, and cunning. They say, They get really deep with their customers and understand what is the momentary goal and need, and then they solve it.
Wow. Okay, so how do we get that executive buy-in then? Obviously, we're going to give them a copy of your book, but how else do we get this executive buy-in, Matthew? What's the first and second steps to getting that executive buy-in so they understand this shift? Because frankly, I haven't not seen a lot of talk about this. This is fairly new to me. So talk to me about how we get that buy-in.
Yeah, there's a couple of things. First off, the firm or your executive has to understand the power of experience. And to do that, I'd say you should definitely give them one specific book, and that's called The Experience Economy. It was just re-released in 2015. That's Joseph Pine and Jim Gilmore. And what that book empirically proves, and it's another Harvard business book, it essentially proves that the highest economic value that a firm can produce is an experience, right? And so that's the foundation. They have to read that. Two, we also have to be aware that it's very difficult to be a prophet in your own land, right? It's very difficult if you are not the executive to go to the executive and talk about high-level strategy, because that's not where they get those ideas from. They get those ideas either because they pay a high-level consultant to come in, so they've bought into the theory, or one of their peers says, hey, we tried this and this worked out, right? Those are the 2 options. What does that leave us with? Well, it leaves us with the ability to test concepts, right? So we have to constantly test. And then when we test ideas, we can then roll those up. And now we start to have the data to back and prove our ideas, right? And we can start to do that in very small ways and then constantly up level, and then comes up from a grassroots effort rather than a top down. So you've got those 3 options, right? Pay a high level consultant, have one of your friends who's already seen this work, tell someone else in your organization, or test these ideas and build them up internally.
Cool. So hopefully we can do that, right? We can certainly test. I think that's the big one. The high level consultant, they're going to have to fund. So I like that idea of testing and retesting and showing that. I think also dropping a copy of The Experience Economy and your book at their desk probably is a good way too, right? As long as they don't see us put it there, that's probably a good move, right? Be sneaky. So
yeah, well, I mean, that's one of the main reasons I wrote this book, right? So I go to organizations all across the globe and work with marketers to try to help them get this understanding at the executive level, right? So this book is there for third-party validation, and by the way, it is filled with data that you can use to do what I call as ammunition, right? You're going to have to make intelligent arguments to get these things done, right? There's plenty of data in this book to help you make those arguments.
Awesome. So you work at Salesforce, which has marketing and sales there. Obviously, you guys do both really well. So how is your book? How is that impacting your sales organization, Matthew?
How's the book impacting our
Yeah,
sales organization?
like the research that you've done. How's this new change, right? And maybe not the book directly, right? But the whole shift here to more experience. How does that impact the way that you guys sell, or does it?
Yes, I mean, we've totally focused on the experience, right? So we are very much an experience-focused company, very much into contextual marketing. Really good examples, right? Trailhead is a really good example of contextual marketing, right? So first off, we didn't create that as a marketing ploy. So let's be very clear, right? One of the things that we have to get past is that these are not ploys, right? These are ways that brands are genuinely trying to help solve people's problems, right? So when we look at our customers have two problems. One is they want to grow their personal career, and two, they want to grow the businesses that they're working at, right? So we created an ecosystem to help facilitate both of those, right? So first off, there is the ability for individuals to connect to others, and they ask questions about the software, they ask questions about other things, and then they answer each other's questions. From that, the people are able to build a personal brand and increase their personal network, right? Now, the fascinating aspect is by doing so, a quarter of the people who are inside of this network have found new jobs. So if we want to talk about concepts of, lifetime value and brand, helping somebody get a new job, like you're in that person's life for a long time in a positive way. Right. And then there's the flip side. There's the other side, which is educational, right? So we help people be better at running their business, whether that is a soft skill that's somewhat related to our technology or that's a hard skill of how to use our technology. We provide them with that education, right? So there's been 14 million courses completed to date, right? Now, when we look at actually what's happening, customers that are in there and educating themselves and learning how to do these things better spend twice as much with us and stay customers 4 times as long. Right. So there's a phenomenal business return by helping people solve their actual goals. So that's kind of how we think about it and how it's impacting us. But we're always focused on the customer, no matter where it's from a marketing, sales, or support standpoint.
Awesome. So you talk about context a little deeper here with 5 elements: available, permissioned, personal, authentic, and personal. Can you talk a little bit about each of those and why focusing on those is going to help organizations be successful in the coming years?
Yeah, so those are really the 5 elements of a contextual experience, right? So an experience must be available for it to be contextual, right? If it's not there, can't help anybody. 2, we need to think about permission, right? If people ask for these things, they're much more receptive to them and have a much more likelihood of motivating action. 3 is personal. We have to get past this concept of personalized and realize the highest economic value or the highest value of the internet is not free distribution. It's personal direct connection, right? So personal is not how personalized can you make it. It's how personal can you deliver it, right? Next is authentic. It doesn't matter what you do. If it's inauthentic, it's a horrible return, right? And finally is purposeful, which means it has to be focused on something other than the product. So that example of Trailhead, purpose-driven, highly authentic, right? The debacle Pepsi found themselves in last year with the whole Kendall Jenner, Kylie Jenner, purpose-driven campaign, which was totally not purpose-driven campaign at all, and all the backlash, including Beatrice King, Dr. Martin Luther King's daughter, saying, if only Daddy had known about the power of a Pepsi, right? If you don't know what I'm talking about, go Google Pepsi and all this stuff, and you'll find it. It was a horrible mishap. Why? Because they were totally inauthentic. It wasn't even a real protest. They just made up a protest, right? So like those are the elements that we have to focus on of what make a contextual experience.
Excellent. I appreciate that. That's very helpful. So this sounds a lot like this might be something that, is really young people driven, right? Some millennial thing. But you guys at Salesforce studied that there's not a significance between any customer profile, right? It doesn't matter what their customer profile is. It doesn't matter. What the heck does that mean? And what are you guys seeing?
Yeah, so just think about this, right? We started off this conversation talking about environmental change. No one has a choice. You live in this environment. Let me give you a really simple story, right? So I come from a farm family. So about 6 years ago, I was on the farm. My grandmother runs out of vacuum bags. We had the 1968 Electrolux vacuum, which still used vacuum bags. I said, don't worry, Grandma, I got you. Pulled out my phone, Amazon, ordered vacuum bags. They were there a couple days later, right? Then this continued to happen over time. So my grandparents started to realize grandson has superpower. ask him. He can order anything in the palm of his hand, right? So me and Grandpa are working on a tractor. We're out on the barn. Grandpa turns to me and says, hey, why don't you pull out your phone and Google that thing up and order it for me? Now, I want you to think very critical about this. This is a 75 or 80-year-old man. I don't remember how old he was at the time. And what he did was, rather than going down to the store and talking to all of his buddies, and that's his normal buying behavior, he asked his grandson to use the internet to buy it for him because he knew it would get there faster. The man has never been on the internet, but his buying behaviors have changed. That's what we're talking about. Everyone is being changed in this modern environment, right? My father, he can't do his Bible study because of the current scenario. So they're all using Zoom and their personal cameras. Something we never would have thought people. My father's a baby boomer. Never would have thought that generation was going to be doing, right? So it's not a generational thing. In fact, when we look at the data, what we find is there's only a 12% delta between the experience expectation. Like, everyone expects experiences. Doesn't matter how old you are. If 100% of millennials expect this experience, you can assume that 88% of baby boomers will want the same thing. They're going to want them on different channels, but what they all want is the exact same. And that's the concept of an experience. And the other reason is why is because that's the environment we all operate in. We're all affected equally.
Wow. That's interesting. My dad, I grew up on a farm in Wisconsin, and my dad calls me to order him light bulbs and other things as well off the internet, or we'll be on the phone. Hey, Phil, can you look something up while we're talking? I don't know how you do it, but go ahead and do that. Very different than 20 years ago when my dad would go down to the gas station, get a cup of coffee, and talk about it with his buddies, but totally experiences it right now. And I think that's a fun change for sure.
Yeah, we were a dairy. What were you guys?
Yeah, we're a dairy farm as well. Yep, in Wisconsin. Absolutely, man.
Holstein strong, baby.
There you go. Woohoo! Awesome. Fantastic, man. So cool. So let's close out here. Let's talk a little bit. You wrote a book about marketing automation, and yet we're going to talk about experience and the context of that. So are they connected? How do we connect those as we kind of bring this home, Matthew?
Yeah, they're 1,000% connected. There's no way to scale experiences across the amount of experiences that we have to create without automation, period. It's just not possible. Where people go wrong with experience and where people go wrong with automation is they automate the wrong things. They essentially said, now I can automate all the stuff I used to do, rather than saying, what is now possible and what could I automate? They just simply automate everything they've done and see it as just an operational efficiency. They don't see it as a new possibility, right? And that's where we have to get to, is people need to realize with automation, you can do radically new things, right? You can create amazing personalized experiences. You can connect humans together in new ways that weren't possible before. Once again, human to human, right? We've got to get there as quick as we can, right? So I believe automation is a big key is a big key factor in this. And that is just simply because it scales a lot of these concepts and it makes them perpetual. And that's kind of just the whole concept.
Awesome. So the book is The Context Marketing Revolution. This is Mathew Sweezey talking with me today about this. So Matthew, if people want to get more connected, if they want to learn more about this, where should they go and how can they talk to you?
Yeah, I mean, first off, go grab a copy of the book. There's a Kindle version. The book just launched on Tuesday. And then, if you want to follow me, you can follow me on LinkedIn. It's Mathew with 1 T. My last name is Sweezey, Sweeezey. I post a lot of stuff about the future of marketing. I'm also on Twitter at msweezey. So those are the places to connect.
Awesome. Such good stuff. Thanks for sharing so much about context, for defining it for us, and talking to us all about the context marketing revolution. Folks, if you haven't gotten this book, and you probably haven't because it just came out, get a copy of it. It's filled with great stuff. Mathew is full of great insight, and this book is data-driven, not just a bunch of anecdotes, but a lot of data that you can use to help get buy-in so you can turn your marketing into an experience and create that context that you need to scale up and win. Thanks so much, Mathew. Really appreciate you.
Thanks for having me, man.